I want you to just picture a household before anyone is even fully awake. Imagine it. It's quiet. The sun is barely up.
Right.
And over in the corner, there's this tiny, heavily coated dog curled up in a warm bed. But suddenly, there's a faint noise out in the hallway. Instantly, the head pops up.
Oh, yeah. Always on alert.
Exactly. There's one sharp bark, and then this little dog trots out into the kitchen, its coat just bouncing dramatically with every step, acting like it has a very serious morning job to do.
Like a little manager.
Yes! It watches breakfast get made like it's a health inspector, it reacts to the doorbell like it's a 5-alarm security threat, and it absolutely refuses to step on that one cold patch of tile floor.
Of course.
And then, the second the walking harness comes out, it spins in excited circles until it's finally clipped in, ready to supervise the entire neighborhood.
It's a very familiar scene for a lot of people.
It really is. And you see that tiny dog spinning in circles, and it's easy to think, what a perfect, easy, low-maintenance pet. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are answering a critical question for you today.
And it's an important one.
Right. We want to know, what is the actual emotional, practical, and financial footprint of a dog that, physically speaking, barely makes a dent in the room?
Because human beings are highly visual creatures, we tend to equate physical size with lifestyle impact. We look at a 5-pound Pomeranian and just assume the responsibility is also 5 pounds.
Which makes sense on the surface, right?
It does, but small size changes the risks, certainly, but it does not erase the needs. A fundamental misunderstanding of what a dog actually is begins the moment we assume a tiny footprint means a tiny presence.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because the most common assumption people make when they see a tiny dog is that its physical footprint perfectly matches its lifestyle footprint.
Yeah, the classic easy apartment dog myth.
Right. You hear small dog, and you immediately think you're getting the ultimate easy apartment dog, a dog that is happy just sitting on a pillow all day.
Well, the physical space an animal occupies is not the same as the energetic space it occupies. I mean, a Pomeranian will physically fit into a tiny studio apartment without any issue. But the square footage of your living room really isn't the deciding factor in whether they will thrive there. The deciding factor is owner effort.
And what does that effort actually look like day to day?
It looks like daily walks, dedicated sniffing time outdoors to engage their brain, indoor play, mental stimulation, and a really predictable household rhythm.
It makes me think of buying a really high-end barista-level espresso machine for a small kitchen.
Ooh, that's a good comparison.
Right, because sure, it physically fits on the counter just fine. The space isn't the issue. But you still have to dial in the grinder. You still have to manually pull the shot. You have to purge the steam on.
You clean it all out.
Exactly. You have to back flush the system every single day. If you aren't willing to do the maintenance routine, the fact that it fits on your counter is basically irrelevant.
The footprint isn't the machine itself. It's the routine required to operate it.
Yeah.
And if you just leave a Pomeranian alone in a small apartment, without any of that structural support or mental maintenance,
you're going to have problems.
Big problems. You don't have an easy apartment dog. You have an understimulated, highly stressed animal that is going to start finding its own, usually vocal or destructive, ways to cope with all that pent-up energy.
Which brings us to the most obvious place all that excess energy goes, which is the barking. It's like the #1 thing people want to know about before bringing this breed home.
It's definitely the most common complaint.
Yeah. Doorbells, elevators, neighbors walking down the hall, passing dogs out the window. These all seem to be major triggers. So I'm curious about the mechanics here. Why are they so inherently vocal compared to, say, a greyhound?
We have to look at their history. The Pomeranian is a spitz breed. If you trace their lineage back, their ancestors were bred to survive in harsh, frozen climates and, crucially, to act as alarm systems for their cants.
Wow, alarm system.
Yes. They were deliberately bred for vigilance. Their whole job was to notice tiny changes in the environment. So a branch snapping in the woods or a stranger approaching the camp, and then to alert the rest of the pack immediately.
And that biological hardwiring doesn't just disappear because they live in a modern high-rise building now.
Not at all. It's still right there in their DNA.
So expecting absolute silence in a modern apartment is not only unrealistic, it's actually deeply unfair to the dog. You're fighting thousands of years of genetics.
What's fascinating here is the psychological shift from trying to achieve suppression to teaching recovery.
Okay, break that down for us. What's the difference?
Well, suppression is trying to force the dog to never bark at all. You are essentially punishing them for doing the job their DNA is screaming at them to do.
Which I imagine makes them pretty stressed.
Extremely. It usually leads to a highly anxious, neurotic animal. Recovery, on the other hand, means acknowledging the dog's instinct. They hear the doorbell, they bark to alert you, and they've done their job.
Okay, so they still get to bark.
Right. The training goal is teaching them to then settle back down, rather than spiraling into a continuous frenzy.
But wait, I have to push back here. If the goal is teaching recovery, what are you actually supposed to do in the moment?
That's the tricky part for most people.
Because when a tiny dog is losing his mind at the doorbell and you are terrified of annoying your neighbors, the immediate human instinct is to scoop them up, to muffle them or soothe them. Is that the wrong move?
It is incredibly counterintuitive,
Mm-hmm.
but picking them up is one of the worst things you can do in that moment.
Really? Why is that?
Let's look at the causality. What actually happens when you pick up a frantic, barking dog? First, you physically elevate them, giving them a much better vantage point of whatever threat they are barking at.
Oh, wow. So they can see the danger even better.
Exactly. Second, you are providing physical touch, warmth, and attention exactly at the moment they are acting frantic.
So from the dog's perspective, you aren't soothing them at all.
No, you are validating the threat. You are essentially saying, you are right to panic. Look how high up I've lifted you so we can face this danger together.
That is wild. You are quietly reinforcing the exact pattern you are desperate to stop.
Precisely. You're rewarding the panic.
So by trying to stop the barking with a hug, we are actually training them to bark more and panic harder. How do you teach recovery then without picking them up?
Teaching recovery means acknowledging the alert with a calm demeanor. Just a simple thank you, I see it, and then redirecting their attention to a high-value reward or a settled place on the floor.
So you just give them an alternative job to do.
Exactly. But the foundational key to all of this is keeping them mentally tired. Understimulation leads to restlessness, which severely lowers their threshold for barking.
Right, because if a dog is bored, every single noise in the hallway becomes a fascinating event to scream about.
Oh, absolutely. It's the highlight of their day. If the weather is bad and you can't go for a long walk, you have to use indoor games. Puzzle toys where they have to work for their kibble, or scent games where you hide treats around the living room.
Or like practicing recall down a long hallway.
Yes, exactly.
Uh,
A dog that has used its brain to solve puzzles is a tired dog, and a tired dog is a quieter dog.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. That question about picking the dog up at the doorbell perfectly leads into a massive topic for anyone who lives with a Pomeranian.
The physical handling.
Yeah, the physical handling and carrying of the breed. Because they are so small and portable, it seems like the default setting for many owners is to just carry them everywhere.
The carrying conundrum is a huge issue. Now, there are absolutely legitimate, safety-based uses for carrying a 5-pound dog.
Like in big crowds, I assume.
Right. If you are in a densely crowded space like a farmer's market where they might easily get stepped on, or if there is an unsafe off-leash dog nearby, or if you're dealing with extreme temperatures like scorching hot asphalt in July, carrying is a necessary safety tool there.
But there is a huge distinction between carrying for safety and default carrying. Carrying them everywhere just because they are small feels a lot like helicopter parenting.
That's a very accurate way to look at it.
You know, when a parent hovers over their kid and removes every single obstacle so the child never experiences any friction whatsoever.
And then they never learn to cope.
Right. The child never learns how to navigate the world themselves, how to deal with disappointment, or how to solve problems. If you constantly carry a tiny dog, aren't you eroding its confidence and its fundamental ability to be a dog? They deserve a life on their own 4 feet.
Absolutely. When a dog walks on a leash, it isn't just moving its legs, it is processing the world. Sniffing is a massive cognitive workout.
Because of how powerful their noses are.
Right, a dog's olfactory bulb is incredibly complex. When they stop to sniff a fire hydrant or a patch of grass, they're essentially reading the local neighborhood news.
Catching up on the gossip.
Yeah. They are processing who has been there, what their health status is, and what's happening in their environment. It's deep mental engagement. Furthermore, walking builds muscle tone. It teaches them how to balance on different terrains.
And forces them to interact with the world.
Exactly, to interpret the body language of other animals. When you carry them everywhere, you deprive them of that vital sensory processing.
You basically create a state of learned helplessness.
Yes, where the dog believes it cannot function unless it is suspended in your arms.
I'll be honest, when I see a tiny dog walking down the street in a thick sweater or a raincoat, I always rolled my eyes a bit and assumed the owner was just playing dress up.
A lot of people think that.
But if we are committing to keeping them on the ground to build that resilience, we have to talk about the physical reality of the weather.
Mm.
Because we look at all that fluff and think they must be insulated and warm all the time.
Well, the physics of a small body dictate a very different reality. A small dog has a much higher surface area to mass ratio compared to a larger breed.
Meaning they get colder faster.
Much faster. They lose core body heat very, very quickly. So in cold, windy, or rainy conditions, that tiny mass really struggles to maintain a safe temperature.
Even with that massive double coat they have.
Yes, they have a dense coat, but if that coat gets wet, or if the wind slices through the guard hairs, their body temperature can drop dangerously fast.
So it's not just a fashion show.
Not at all. Putting a sweater or a well-fitted coat on a Pomeranian in bad weather is not a fashion accessory. It is a legitimate, necessary comfort tool to keep them safely on their own 4 feet.
And building that physical resilience on the ground seems directly tied to building emotional resilience. I mean, independence has to be actively taught.
It does. They don't just naturally know it.
Right, you can't just assume a dog that bonds this closely to you will naturally know how to be alone in an apartment while you go to work.
You have to build their tolerance to solitude gradually. And you do this by keeping your departures and returns completely low-key.
No big dramatic goodbyes.
Exactly. If you make a huge emotional production out of leaving the house, hugging them, kissing them, using a high-pitched, worried voice, you are signaling to the dog that your absence is a major, terrifying event to panic over.
So you just act completely normal.
You walk out the door calmly and you walk back in calmly. If that panic turns into destructive behavior, nonstop vocalizing, or house soiling specifically when you leave, that points to severe separation anxiety.
Which goes beyond just training, right?
Yes, that requires intervention from a veterinarian or a qualified behaviorist, not just basic obedience training.
Letting the dog navigate the world on its own 4 feet and teaching it independence means the dog is inevitably going to interact with its environment.
Of course.
Which brings us to family dynamics, kids, other pets, and some really unique physical vulnerabilities. Are they good with kids? I think that is probably the second most common question people ask right after the barking.
It is a question that requires a really nuanced answer because a Pomeranian can be a wonderful, affectionate family companion, but their physical size makes gentle handling an absolute non-negotiable requirement.
Because to a kid, they just look like a toy.
Exactly. To a child, a fluffy 5-pound dog looks exactly like a stuffed animal. But kids cannot grab them, squeeze them, or chase them. A child might think they were just playing a fun game of tag. But to a tiny dog, a lunging toddler is terrifying.
I can imagine. It's like a giant coming at you.
Right. Adult supervision is mandatory at all times. The dog also requires a safe retreat space, like a covered crate or a specific room gated off, where no one, especially a child, is ever allowed to bother them.
I think that vulnerability plays directly into how these dogs communicate. People often freak out when their tiny, cute dog growls at a child or a guest.
Oh, they panic.
Yeah, they immediately assume the dog is becoming aggressive, dominant, or mean, and their first instinct is to punish the dog for making the noise.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, redefining what a growl actually is completely changes the dynamic of human-animal communication.
So a growl isn't just them being bad.
No, growling is not defiance. It is information. It is the dog clearly saying, I am deeply uncomfortable, a boundary has been crossed, and I need space.
So if you punish them for it.
If you punish a dog for growling, you are essentially removing their warning system. You aren't making the dog less uncomfortable. You are just teaching them that communicating their discomfort is dangerous.
Oh, wow. So you're forcing them to escalate?
Exactly. What happens when you remove a dog's ability to warn you? You create a dog that will eventually bite without warning.
That is such a vital distinction. Instead of punishing the communication, we need to change the human behavior causing the discomfort in the first place.
Exactly right.
Teaching kids to invite contact, like holding out a hand and letting the dog choose to approach them, rather than forcing contact by leaning over the dog, protects everyone involved. And this vulnerability extends beyond children, too. It applies to other pets.
Absolutely. A large dog, even a completely friendly, well-socialized one, can accidentally cause severe injury to a Pomeranian during normal, well-meaning play.
Just because of the size difference.
Right. A paw strike from a Labrador that would just be a playful tap to another large dog can be a concussive blow to a 5-pound frame. The size mismatch is simply too great. Rough play has to be interrupted immediately.
What about cats?
Interestingly, cats usually coexist with them beautifully once properly introduced
Mhm.
because cats respect boundaries and don't have that same blunt force playstyle.
That makes sense. But dogs on the street are a different story.
Oh, completely. Out on walks, maintaining distance from unknown dogs is often much safer than allowing a nose-to-nose greeting.
Yeah.
You simply don't know how a strange dog will react to something that looks a bit like a squirrel.
And it's not just other animals or kids. Everyday home safety requires this constant, low-level hum of hyper-awareness about where your dog is at all times.
The floor becomes a hazard zone.
Yeah. You have to actively alter your walking patterns to avoid stepping on them, especially if they like to follow you into the kitchen. You have to manage them jumping off furniture because a leap from a high bed can easily snap a fragile leg bone.
It happens all the time, sadly.
You have to supervise them on stairs. You even have to add rugs or traction pads to slippery hardwood floors so they don't repeatedly slip and injure their joints over time.
It is a profound daily commitment to their physical safety. And protecting their delicate frame leads us to perhaps the most time-consuming physical commitment of all.
Managing the very thing that makes a Pomeranian so recognizable, the fluff. We have to talk about the grooming, and I love the way this is framed because so many people look at show dogs and think all that brushing is just about aesthetics, but grooming is not vanity, it is healthcare.
It absolutely is healthcare.
What does that actually entail on a weekly basis?
It means grooming must be a regular, integrated part of your week, not just an occasional appointment you make when the dog starts looking messy. A Pomeranian has a double coat.
So that's two different layers of fur.
Right, a soft, dense undercoat and harsher, longer outer guard hairs. If you don't brush them down to the skin regularly, that soft undercoat gets trapped and begins to weave together into tight mats.
And matting is bad news.
Very bad. Matting isn't just ugly, it actively pulls on the dog's skin, restricting blood flow and trapping moisture and bacteria against the body. That leads to severe skin infections.
And I imagine it's not just running a brush over the top of their back. You really have to get into the friction zones.
You do. You have to pay close attention to the areas where the body moves and creates friction. So the armpits, behind the ears, the belly, the tail base, these are the areas most prone to knotting.
And you have to be gentle about it, I assume.
Extremely gentle. If you try to roughly rip a slicker brush through a tangled mat, you are actively hurting the dog. You will quickly turn grooming from a neutral, calming, bonding experience into a dreaded, combative activity that the dog just fights you on.
Nobody wants to wrestle a dog every week.
No. Furthermore, while you are brushing, you are actually performing a physical exam. You are feeling for strange lumps, checking the skin for redness, flakiness, or looking for parasites like fleas or ticks that can easily hide in that dense forest of fur.
So what does this all mean? When we bring all of this abstract advice about grooming, daily hyper-awareness, and mental stimulation down to brass tacks, what does this actually mean for the listener's wallet and their weekend schedule?
The big question.
Because there is a very persistent assumption out there that small dogs are automatically cheap dogs.
It means you need to budget for a complex, long-term financial commitment. Yes, a 5-pound dog eats significantly less kibble than a golden retriever. The monthly food bill is undoubtedly lower.
Where you're buying a lot less dog food.
But the cost elsewhere can be staggering. You have the cost of consistent grooming tools and professional grooming appointments. You need specialized safety gear, like properly fitted harnesses, to protect their delicate tracheas.
And then there are the medical realities of toy breeds.
Yes,
Dental care is a massive one for small dogs, isn't it?
it is a notorious expense. When you take 42 adult canine teeth and squeeze them into a jawbone the size of a walnut, you get severe overcrowding.
Wow, 42 teeth in that tiny mouth.
Exactly. Teeth sit sideways, they trap food particles constantly, and plaque builds up incredibly fast. This leads to rapid periodontal disease.
So that means lots of vet visits.
Professional dental cleanings under anesthesia, which often involve extractions, are a regular part of their healthcare budget. Add in parasite prevention, vaccines, and the reality that these dogs often live well into their mid-teens, requiring years of specialized senior care. And the financial footprint is substantial.
It's budgeting for the whole picture, not just the food bowl, which really clarifies the difference between the ideal owner and the owner who's ultimately going to struggle with this breed.
The ideal Pomeranian owner is observant, patient, and willing to actively train and groom their dog every single week.
And they know how to set boundaries, too.
Right. They know how to set firm behavioral boundaries without becoming overly protective. Most importantly, they respect the dog's autonomy and treat it like a capable canine, not a helpless infant.
And the owner who will struggle is someone who is just looking for a quiet, low-maintenance decoration to sit on their sofa.
Yes, or someone who won't put in the mental work to manage the barking.
Right, who won't commit the time to the grooming or who expects a rough-and-tumble playmate for their unsupervised toddlers. It's not that they're a bad person, it's simply that their lifestyle expectations are fundamentally mismatched with the biological and psychological reality of this specific breed.
A Pomeranian is a spitz breed with a huge voice, a sharp, active brain, and a demanding coat, all compressed into a tiny, fragile frame.
And that brings us to our core takeaway for you today. A Pomeranian is not a decoration, and it is not a stereotype.
It is a real dog.
Exactly. It is a complete dog with real skeletal structure, real training needs, extensive grooming requirements, and serious health considerations. The mistake isn't loving the fluff. The fluff is amazing.
It is pretty great.
The mistake is only seeing the fluff and ignoring the brilliant, demanding dog underneath it. Small size changes the physical risks you have to manage, but it absolutely does not erase the psychological needs of the animal. Cute does not replace the need for training.
It is a remarkable creature that demands respect for its true, complex nature, not just its adorable appearance.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. How often does our human bias toward things that are cute or tiny completely blind us to their complex inner lives?
That's a profound point.
Think about it. If we treated a 5-pound Pomeranian with the exact same psychological respect, the same expectations of autonomy, and the same dedication to training as we do a 100-pound German Shepherd, how might that reframe not just our relationship with our pets, but our relationship with anything in our lives that we tend to underestimate based entirely on its packaging?
It requires us to look past the surface level of everything we interact with and engage with the complicated reality underneath.
So tomorrow morning, when you imagine that tiny dog trotting into the kitchen with its bouncing coat to do its morning job, remember it's not just a cute toy, it's a complex, alert thinking partner navigating a giant world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning those assumptions, and we'll catch you next time.